us today for this session. He is the chairperson of the National Water Policy Committee. He is a co-founder of Samaj Pragati Sahayog, one of India's largest grassroots initiatives for water and livelihood security. Some SPS, Samaj Pragati Sahayog, it works with 122 partners on 1 million acre of land across 72 districts in 12 states. He graduated with a BA degree from St. Stephen's, Delhi in economics, MA from Delhi School of Economics, and he's our very own because he's got his PhD from Center for Development Studies. He was advisor to the commissioner appointed by the Supreme Court of India in the Right to Food case from 2002 to 2009. As an honorary advisor to the Technical Committee on Watershed Program set up by the Government of India in 2006, he is largely responsible for drafting its landmark report that argues for radical reforms in India's watershed sector. In 2007, he co-founded the National Consortium of Civil Society Organizations. From 2009 to 14, he was a member of the Planning Commission, Government of India, holding the portfolios of water resources, rural development, and decentralized governance. He is the youngest ever member of the Planning Commission. He was chiefly responsible for drafting the paradigm shift in the management of water resources enunciated in the 12th five-year plan. As chairman of the Government of India's Committee for Revision of MGNREGA guidelines, he initiated a makeover of MGNREGA, the largest employment program in human history, with a renewed emphasis on rural livelihoods based on construction of productive assets. In July 2017, he became one of the founding signatories of the Geneva Actions of Water Security. He has worked with several state governments. He was appointed chair of the task group to draft Karnataka state water policy. He chaired a group of water experts tasked with devising a new water strategy for Madhya Pradesh. He has combined 20 years of living and working at the grassroots level with academic research and policy advocacy. He has received national and international recognition for his work, including the Social Entrepreneur of the Year award from the American India Foundation and Doreen Mashler Award of the International Crop Research Institute for Semi-Arid Tropics. He has published extensively in national and international peer-reviewed journals, authored several books, and is a visiting faculty at Ashoka University, distinguished visiting professor at Shiv Nadar University. Today, he is going to talk on the very important topic of water and farm crisis in India, understanding the interconnections. So we are very grateful that you agreed to be a part of this lecture series. Now I invite you to deliver your talk. The stage is all yours, sir. Now you're there, sir. Yeah.
Right. No, I lost it. See, this is the problem. As you know, I'm sitting in a remote tribal area of this country, and this is the state of the nation 75 years after independence. But I'll do my best. Let's hope you're all able to hear me clearly and see me. And if I missed the last part of what you're saying, but if you're ready, I'm ready to begin my presentation. Okay? I'm not able to hear you, but maybe...
sorry, I muted myself. Please,
no
please.
Yes, so I'll start presenting. Just let me know that you can see my presentation. Can you see my presentation?
Yes,
Are you able to see it?
Yes.
Okay.
We see the title slide of your presentation.
Yeah, that's right. So I'll keep moving the slides and you can tell me if everything is going fine. So, the topic I've chosen to speak to you about today is about understanding the interrelationship between India's water and farm crises. The main argument of my presentation, can you see the next slide?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, right. So I was just checking because, I hope the system is working fine. So the argument I'm presenting to you is that without a paradigm shift in farming, India's water problem cannot be solved. And conversely, without a paradigm shift in water, India's farm crisis will remain unresolved. And the key task before us is to draw the right lessons from the experience of the Green Revolution, which is now 50 years old. And if we draw the right lessons, then it is possible to address both the crisis facing India's farmers and also we can solve India's water problem. But if we don't draw the right lessons from the Green Revolution, both the crises will remain unresolved and they could even get aggravated. Why do we speak of a farm crisis in India? Because, as you all know, over the last 30 years, 3 lakh farmers have committed suicide, and this phenomenon is completely unprecedented in Indian history. Can you still see me and listen to me?
Yes, sir, perfectly fine.
Right. Because the power is actually gone, so which is what we were anticipating. So let's see. Let's see how long we can last. So now this is something which has never happened before. We've had, farm crises, hunger, famine, droughts, and starvation, but not farmers' suicides at this scale. And you all know that in the tribal areas of central India, there is a Maoist insurgency ongoing. And even that can be said to be a reflection of the agrarian crisis facing central India. Wages in real terms, livestock sector, the whole impact of demonetization, you're all aware of all these phenomena. I'm not going to go into them in more detail. But you must also note very clearly that, since the second 5-year plan, all of you, I presume, are students of economics, you must have studied development economics, you must know that the second 5-year plan was based on the presumption that India's economic problems can only be solved when we move a large number of people out of agriculture and out of rural areas into urban areas and into the industrial sector, right? But where is that urban industrial alternative? What are the rates of growth of Indian industry? Even after 3 decades of liberalization, there is no alternative for the people living in rural India, the people engaged in farming. And so without addressing the challenges faced by farming and by rural India, we will not be able to tackle the problems of hunger and poverty in this country. Look at the vulnerability of India's farm sector today. In 2001, agricultural trade as a percentage of agricultural GDP was hardly about 5%. Today it has almost gone up by 4 times. There is huge vulnerability to volatility in world commodity prices, especially soybean, pulses, cotton, meat and poultry products. And with the Ukraine conflict, as you all know, these problems have got even more aggravated. And what we find is that WTO has become like a fig leaf behind which the US and Europe continue to subsidize their farmers, but they erect major tariff walls to check cheaper imports from countries like India. So this is a very unfair and unjust trade regime which has been set up. India has been fighting a battle to protect our farm subsidies, but as you all know, this is a very difficult situation facing India's farmers. Now look at water. Let us look at the water crisis. What are the basic facts of water in India? The FAO's Aquastat database is the single most important database on water internationally in the world. Now, agriculture takes up 90% of India's water. And if you look at water in greater depth, you will find that over the last 4 decades, where irrigated area has grown, 84% of it has come from groundwater. At 250 billion cubic meters, India draws more groundwater every year than any other country in the world. In fact, India's annual consumption is more than that of China and the US put together, who are the second and third largest consumers of groundwater. And what has happened is that after the Green Revolution, we have been drilling deeper and deeper through bore wells. And that has meant that 60% of India's districts today suffer from falling water tables and or serious issues of water quality, including arsenic, fluoride, manganese, even uranium. We have trains which are leaving Punjab carrying patients who have cancer. They are being taken to the medical capitals of this country. And there are villages in Punjab where nobody is willing to marry their daughters into, because the feeling is that most of that village is affected by cancer. And that has to do with the uranium that is coming in the drinking water because of geogenic pollution, because of the depths to which we are drilling for groundwater in Punjab. In eastern India, you have arsenic, fluoride, etc. So where is the origin of this water crisis? And for this, it is very important to understand briefly the science of hydrogeology. And what we find when we look carefully at the hydrogeological facts of India is that 2/3 of the Indian landmass is underlain by hard rock formations. And what is the characteristics of these hard rocks? That the natural rate of recharge is very low. So what happens is you extract groundwater very rapidly, but the water takes a very long time to go back below the ground from where it came. And that means that there is constant depletion of water tables, because of which farmers drill deeper and deeper. And that leads to a fall in water quality as well, because you hit deposits of arsenic, fluoride, uranium, etc. So essentially what's happening is that groundwater is a common pool resource, right? It's a resource which is found in the aquifers below the ground. Aquifers are the underground storehouses of water. And that is a common pool resource, because what happens is, even if you have land, the water below the land actually can lie below many farmers' fields. So individual farmers are competing with each other to extract more and more groundwater from below the ground. And that has led to a major groundwater crisis in India. It has also led to a situation where our peninsular rivers have dried up. So I am going to show you, can you see, just let me know that you're being able to see this animation. This animation will show you how there is actually a depletion of groundwater taking place through competitive drilling by different farmers. So this is the initial situation where there are only shallow dug wells. Okay, now comes the green revolution. And the green revolution means that you are drilling deep for water, and a rich farmer has drilled deep. What's happened is water finds its own level. So the dug wells, the small and marginal farmers have completely emptied of water. And now this rich farmer is saying, I am going to laugh all the way to the bank. I have all the groundwater in our aquifer. But then what happens? Mrs. Gandhi nationalizes the banks in 1969. Credit becomes available to many small and marginal farmers, and they also start drilling deep for groundwater. And then what happens is there is a competitive extraction for deeper and deeper levels. So again, the rich farmer goes the deepest, and he's happy for a short period of time, but slowly and steadily and inexorably, even his groundwater, the tube well is completely dried up. And so not only are the tube wells dried up, but the entire aquifer is now empty of water. Now, let's try and understand how the rivers are getting depleted. So I'll explain this through another animation, where we see how the over-extraction of groundwater has led to a decline in the flows of the peninsular rivers. So in this initial situation, what's happening is the aquifers are providing water to the river. This river is a gaining river. After the monsoon in India, rivers gain their water from groundwater. So this is what's happening initially. But as the green revolution comes and as drilling of groundwater happens in this aquifer, the water table actually falls below the level of the river, and the gaining river now becomes a losing river. What's happened now? The aquifer has dried up and the river has also dried up. So this is the history of the green revolution, and how what has happened is by extracting more and more groundwater, irrespective of the hydrogeology, India has actually manufactured a water crisis for itself. So let's try and now understand the interconnections between what we have described already as the farm crisis and the water crisis. Now, what you need to understand is that obviously the Green Revolution came with a great promise of increased yields because of application of chemical inputs like fertilizers and pesticides, use of seeds which yielded much more than the traditional seeds. But then you know also that those are the seeds which required so much more water. And we already know what has happened to the water tables. But what has also happened is that there is, over time, there has been a reduced yield response to fertilizers and pesticides. So farmers are having to apply more and more chemical inputs to yield the same level of output. And this has led to a dramatic rise in costs of production, which has resulted in falling net incomes. Because what has happened is that not only are we having to put more and more inputs, the costs of these inputs have also been going up. So what has happened? There is an explosion in the chemical fertilizer subsidy in India. There is another graph I can show you which also show the use of pesticides has also been going up. But this is a very dramatic illustration of the fact that fertilizer consumption and fertilizer subsidy are rising exponentially. And if you know, if you followed the news recently, this is the graph which is showing you about 1,40,000 crores. The fertilizer subsidy for next year, given the war in Ukraine, is likely to jump to more than 200,000 crores. In fact, something like 230,000 crores. So this is where this is becoming a more and more unaffordable proposition, not only for the farmers, but for the government of India's fiscal deficit also. So what is the relationship between the water and the farm crisis? The fact is, if you look at farming more carefully, 90% of India's water is being used by agriculture, but 80% of that water is being consumed by just 3 crops: rice, wheat, and sugarcane. And what the Green Revolution paradigm did is that government was only procuring rice and wheat. Even now, public procurement of crops in India, 95% is rice and wheat. And sugarcane is bought by the sugar mills, as you all know. Sugarcane is even grown in water-short Maharashtra, where it is leading to a major water crisis. It's only because there is an assured market for sugarcane. So public procurement of rice and wheat and purchase of sugarcane by sugar mills has meant that farmers, even in water-short regions, are growing these water-intensive crops. And what the Green Revolution also has done is to introduce monocropping. Now, you all know that if you invest in the stock market, you should have a diversified portfolio to minimize risk. Now you look at agriculture. Agriculture is even more risky than the stock market because it has not only market risk, it also has a risk of the weather. So monocropping has reduced the resilience to weather and market risk, which traditionally India had before the Green Revolution, because India had a much more diversified cropping pattern before the Green Revolution, and that cropping pattern was in alignment with the local agroecology. Now, not only is there a water crisis, there is also a health crisis. And I've listed the kinds of cancers. Cancer has become the second most common disease in India, responsible for 30 lakh deaths per annum. And these are the various kinds of cancers that the excessive use of chemical inputs has led to. Here is a graphic illustration. I'm sure you will be shared this presentation, so please have a look at it more carefully with more time. But there are major disastrous health consequences of the use of pesticides. So now, having described the crisis, I want to now focus the rest of my class, my lecture, on what we need to change, because there is a definite solution to the farm and water crisis facing India. And fundamentally, I'm saying we have to question two things. One, the entire conception of the agricultural production system, which was totally commodity centric. What does that mean? See, what was the idea in the Green Revolution? The idea was that we must deploy such seeds which, given the right doses of fertilizers and pesticides, would maximize output per unit area of that crop. So we took rice and wheat. This was actually called by the American advisors to the government of India at that time. It was called betting on the strong. Betting on the strong means that you focus on regions where output can be increased. You focus on two crops which are staples across the country. And if you maximize the production of these crops, you can remove the kind of food insecurity that India was facing. And to a great extent, that has happened. But what has happened is that you have increased the output just of wheat and rice. And what we have done is that you have only focused on output per unit of area, and you have had a very specific kind of vision of soils. So a lot of what I'm going to tell you about today is about the importance of soils. See, the Green Revolution vision, for the Green Revolution, the soil was essentially a stockpile of minerals and salts. And crop production, if any of you have studied agricultural science, you will know crop production is supposed to be constrained as Liebig's law of the minimum by the nutrient least present in the soil. So the solution that the Green Revolution found was to enrich the soil with chemical fertilizers, and the soil was just seen as a base with physical attributes necessary to hold the roots of the plant that was growing. So crops and soil were brute physical matter, collections of molecules to be optimized by chemical recipes rather than flowing energy charged wholes. The references I've cited in this lecture are also given at the end of this presentation. All of you, if you are interested, should go into more detail. So there are three questions that need to be posed to the Green Revolution approach to soil. Is the soil an input-output machine, a passive reservoir of chemical nutrients to be endlessly flogged to deliver even as it shows clear signs of fatigue? Or is it a complex, interacting, living ecosystem to be cherished and maintained so that it can become a vibrant circulatory network which nourishes the plants and animals that feed it? Will a toxic, enervated ecosystem with very poor soil quality and structure, as also gravely fallen water tables, be able to continue to support the agriculture production system? So what is it? Why are we talking about the state of soils in India? Let us examine more closely what is the state of soils in India and why soils are so important. Now, I don't know if you have all heard of Ratan Lal. He's one of the 2020 winners of the World Food Prize, one of the most eminent agricultural scientists in the world. Now, he estimates that the weight of living organisms in a healthy soil is about 5 tons per hectare. And the activity and species diversity of soil biota are responsible for numerous essential ecosystem services. Now, I'll just describe to you what those services are. Now, soil organic matter is an indicator of soil health and should be about 2.5 to 3% by weight in the root zone of the soil, that is the top 20 centimeters. But soils in Punjab, Haryana, Rajasthan, central and southern India contain hardly 0.2 to 0.5 soil organic matter. And recently, the Center for Science and Environment has brought out a report on the state of India's soils. And if you look at this graph carefully, you will see how badly depleted India's soils are of all the kinds of nutrients that are required to maintain good soil health. So you can see after all these years after the Green Revolution, this is why productivity levels are falling in Indian agriculture. Despite increasing application of chemical inputs, the productivity, farm productivity, is consistently going down. So, what is the significance of soils is what we must more carefully understand. According to the Food and Agriculture Organization, generating 3 centimeters of topsoil takes 1,000 years. And if the current rates of degradation continue, all of the world's topsoil will be gone within the next 60 years. So it is extremely important to understand the key relationship between soil quality and water productivity and recognize that every land use decision is also a water use decision because soil organic matter affects the physical, chemical, and biological and ecological qualities of the soil. So, what are the relationships between all these parameters? In physical terms, higher soil organic matter improves water infiltration rates and the soil's water holding capacity. What has happened after the Green Revolution is that this soil structure has completely been destroyed. So the capacity of the soil to hold water, to allow water to permeate, has gone down. Chemically, soil organic matter impacts the soil's capacity to buffer against pH, its ion and cation exchange capacities, nutrient storage and availability, and nutrient use efficiency. Now, that is the key problem that we are having. We are putting in a lot of nutrients, but the nutrient use efficiency of the soil depends on its soil organic matter content, which has gone terribly low. Biologically, most important, soil organic matter is a habitat and reservoir for the gene pool, for gaseous exchange between the soil and the atmosphere, and for carbon sequestration. You may have all heard about carbon sequestration, how important it is in this era of climate change, and soil is the best way to sequester carbon. You know, people talk of tree plantation. Yes, that's a good way, but the most important reservoir for carbon sequestration actually is soil, and soil organic matter determines how much carbon sequestration can happen. And ecologically, of course, elemental cycling, ecosystem carbon budget, filtering of pollutants, and ecosystem productivity all are determined by soil organic. So scholars studying the world food system are now speaking of what they call a paradox of productivity. What has happened? The efficiency of production has increased, but the efficiency of the food system as a whole has come down, which means you are not delivering nutritious food sustainably and with little waste. And this makes it a very, very serious problem about food security itself. So, as students of economics, you're taught total factor productivity. What we are now saying is policy makers need to look at what we call total system productivity. So, what is total system productivity? A food system with high total system productivity would be sufficiently productive to meet human nutritional needs while imposing few costs on the environment and society, so being sustainable, and highly efficient at all stages of the food chain so as to minimize waste. Now, this way, if you change the paradigm of farming, which I'll explain to you in what we have to do, you will have a massive increase in what we call total system productivity in agriculture. So, what is it that we need to do? What is the paradigm shift? I've explained to you why we need the paradigm shift. Now we come to what exactly we have to do. First, we have to diversify cropping patterns. We cannot have this monoculture. We cannot have just rice and wheat over large tracts in India. We have to diversify cropping patterns to align them with agroecological conditions. One of the most important features of India is its diversity and it's its strength. Richness of our diversity is something we must leverage. We have today, the Green Revolution has today disadvantaged us in doing that. We must also move more and more towards nature-based farming solutions and water-saving techniques and farming methods. The focus has to shift from a monocultural commodity output-centered preoccupation towards improving, as I explained to you, the productivity of the whole farming system. So, people are today talking about natural farming, and there are lots of discussions, battle lines have been drawn, but I think we need to carefully understand what this term means. First, obviously, it means progressive rationalization and reduction of chemical inputs at the appropriate pace. We are not talking of sudden changes. Okay, that has happened in Sri Lanka recently and has created a big scare. We have to constantly monitor the health of the soil, and when we find that the soil health is improving through the kinds of new technology of farming that we are adopting. We can reduce the use of chemical inputs. Pesticides certainly can be replaced by many more nature-friendly solutions, which I will briefly describe. Second, we have to promote crop diversification and move decisively away from the monocultures of the Green Revolution. We have to focus on the productivity of the whole farm system. Sometimes it's called permaculture. It's about the design, the science of designing farm systems, moving away from the commodity-centric approach of the Green Revolution. We have to regenerate natural cycles and soil health to boost yields and promote pest management. Sorry, and we have to use crop varieties which are based on the local germplasm of which each region in India has a rich repository. This is where we have lost out by losing out on the rich agrobiodiversity of India. We have actually lost possibilities of increasing agricultural yield in India. So what do we do? What does it mean to reactivate natural cycles? What we do in natural farming is to leverage biological synergies among numerous plant and animal species, from soil fungi to trees, from soil bacteria or earthworms to livestock. All of these interact in a very, very productive way with each other, and this is what is called the soil food web. Plants exude enzymes which are the food for the soil microbes, and as the microbes multiply, their predators multiply, and the entire soil food web gets activated. This triggers the exchange process between plants, soil microbes, and soil nutrients. See, minerals are otherwise locked, but through this process, they become bioavailable to plants. And that is the magic of natural farming. So by stimulating this process, natural farming practices build soil humus, soil fertility, and soil structure on a continuous basis. The resultant increase in soil moisture gives massive savings in water use. This is a picturization. When you have more time, you sit with this presentation, look at the beauty of the soil food web, and what the paradigm shift in agriculture has to be about can be summarized also through this diagram. I'm not going to, I know time is short. You should take time to study this diagram, and anyone who wants to ask me questions on email is most welcome. The organizers must share my email with all the participants, and I'll be happy to respond to their questions. So now let's look at each of these policy proposals in some depth. We have talked of crop diversification. So what we are saying is that if we want to move away from a situation where we have water guzzlers like wheat, rice, and sugarcane dominating the cropping pattern and taking away 80% of irrigation, we must diversify the public procurement portfolio. See, today if public procurement is focusing only on wheat and rice, then farmers are being incentivized to grow these crops. What we need to do in an agroecologically specific manner is to introduce low water requiring, resilient and nutritious millets, pulses, and oil seeds into public procurement. India had a great repository of these crops before the Green Revolution, brought in the monoculture of wheat and rice. Now the question is, what will we do with these crops? If we start procuring pulses, millets, and oil seeds, what will we do? I think the best solution is to introduce these crops into the supplementary nutrition given in the Anganwadis for preschool children, the midday meals given in the schools, and the public distribution system. All three of them, by the way, are the largest programs of their kind in the world. Just imagine the huge demand we will create for these crops. And once that demand becomes, a part of the system, then farmers will be incentivized to grow more and more millets, pulses, and oil seeds and integrate them into their cropping pattern. So what we also need to do, of course, at the same time is that among the urban consumers, among young people like you, we have to popularize the use of millets and pulses in food. And the National Institute of Nutrition is already engaged in this work. Many of us, organizations like ours, are working closely with them, with dietitians, with nutritionists, to try and see how to make these kinds of crops attractive for children. for women, for consumers, so that more and more these become part of the diet as they were the diet of Indians before the Green Revolution. And the Poshan Abhiyan, which has been launched by the government of India, is essentially about doing this. Now, what that will do is to diversify the cropping pattern, improve the nutritional status of Indians who are suffering from malnutrition and diabetes, but it will also lead to a massive saving in water. Now, in order to quantify, uh, we actually did a study for the Niti Aayog and the FAO. The paper has been published in the EPW last year. At the end of this presentation, the reference is there. I don't know if it was circulated to you beforehand. I don't know if you got a chance to read, because I see that you had to attend a number of very, very interesting lectures in a very short period of time. So you may not have had time, but if you are interested in these issues, please do read those papers in detail. This is the question we asked ourselves, one of the questions we asked in the paper. If a switch is made in the cropping patterns in India to reflect the agroecological diversity of the country, what would be the volume of water India would save? We took 11 major agricultural states in the country. The names are before you. These states account for nearly 2/3 of India's irrigation. And what we did was, we took the 3 most water intensive crops and we redistributed the area, not entirely. We took a certain percentage. We tried to estimate what would happen if you made a 10% switch, if you made a 25% switch, if you made a 50% switch, not more than that. We are not against rice, wheat or sugarcane, we are not against anything, but we are saying there has to be diversity. So the replacement crops were largely pulses, nutri-cereals, some oil seeds, and these were governed. What are the replacement crops? They should be the crops which are suited to the agroecology of those regions and where India's farmers have an experience of growing those crops before the Green Revolution. I'm just summarizing some of the tables that are there in that paper. Please look up the paper. So what we did is, we said, built many scenarios of crop replacement by states and by seasons, Rabi and Kharif. And you can see which crops we put state and season wise. And finally, we estimated through a fairly complicated methodology of estimation, which is all described in the paper, where we showed what percentage, and you can see massive water savings can be effected by just a small switch in cropping pattern. So here is where you can see the very deep interlinkage between the problem and the farm crisis that is facing India's farmers. So in the last slide, I will just summarize what is the paradigm shift in farming and how it can lead to a solution to the problems faced by the farmers and the water crisis in India. So what we do is, we improve the capacity of soil to retain water, we use less chemical inputs, and we grow more of the low water using crops, all of which combine to reduce the demand for water. I'll tell you an anecdote. When the former Chief Minister of Maharashtra, Devendra Fadnavis, was in power, he had once invited me to Maharashtra to, ask me how to solve the water problem. So I asked him a quiz question, which I ask normally all my students. I said, what do you think, sir, is the percentage of cropped area of sugarcane in Maharashtra? Now, he was not very sure, but I'll give you the answer because we are short of time. It's only actually 4%, Only 4% of Maharashtra's area is under sugarcane. But then the question is, how much of irrigation that Maharashtra gets is taken up by sugarcane? And the answer is 65%. So 4% is taking up 65%. I just told him, reduce the area under sugarcane to 2%. Maharashtra's water problem will be solved. So this is just to give a very anecdotal illustration of the potential, huge potential of solving India's water problem by a more diversified cropping pattern. Now, a more diversified cropping pattern also builds greater resilience to market and weather risks, especially in an era of climate change. Low use of it. So what happens is that farmer incomes, you see, are going in a seesaw manner, year after year. We need greater stability. So the standard deviation, the variance has to come down. The mean, should not fall so dramatically in bad years and go up in bumper years, and in bumper crop years again, because prices fall, we don't necessarily get farmer incomes going up. So we have to get a more resilient farm system in place. The lower use of chemical inputs not only implies less water use, it implies better water quality and reduces the cost of production, which leads to a rise in net farm incomes. More soil organic carbon leads to higher farm productivity and greater carbon sequestration. So what do we get? We get multiple win-wins. Higher farmer incomes, better soil health, improved water tables, better water quality, river rejuvenation. You remember the animation. Consumer health, because you are now consuming far more healthy foods, and greater insurance against risk for India's farmers. This is a slide which gives you the references which I have made use of in this small presentation. Do look at them, and I wanted to leave some time for any questions that you may have on this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for a very insightful presentation. I now request students to please unmute yourself and if questions, please ask your questions.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Thank you, sir, for this comprehensive and informative session. So, all the problems like the water table declining and soil organic carbon, so everything lies with soil health, most probably. So, what are the solutions? Like if we take the different agriculture models like natural farming or organic farming, so will that be sustainable?
Right. Okay. So, no, this is obviously the question that is asked, that will we be able to maintain productivity levels? What will happen to food security? Is that your question?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, look, what we forget when we ask this question is, what is the state of food security today? If we continue with the same paradigm, you look at the water tables across the country, especially in the heartlands of the Green Revolution, water tables are falling very rapidly. And many studies exist which show that, for example, Punjab and Haryana will not be able to sustain the levels of production of wheat and rice that they are producing today within the next 10 years. We are going to have a major food crisis because we do not have the water, and the productivity of the soil has gone down so much. Because of constant application of chemical inputs, the capacity of the soil to absorb nutrients has gone down. So we need to improve the capacity of the soil to absorb nutrients to maintain soil productivity. See, 50 years is a very long time, in which we have continuously depleted soil productivity and water productivity in our farm systems. Unless we revive that productivity, and the only way of doing so is by reducing progressively the use of chemical inputs and reviving the soil food web, which actually sustains productivity. Now, the question asked is, but the production of millets cannot be compared to the production of rice and wheat, cereals like that, which is correct. But we are not asking for rice and wheat to be completely replaced by millets, oilseeds, or pulses. We are saying let's have a healthy mix in the cropping pattern. And we are also saying that in eastern India, for example, see, rice was never grown in Punjab before the Green Revolution. I hope you know that. Rice is not native to Punjab. It should never have been grown there. Even today, it's creating major problems there. But eastern India, why are we not improving productivity of rice in eastern India? Why are we not improving the share of procurement of eastern India in rice? We are procuring so much rice from Punjab and Haryana and Madhya Pradesh, Punjab and Haryana, not Madhya Pradesh is wheat. But what we are not doing is to focus procurement operations of rice in the eastern parts of this country, in Orissa, in West Bengal, in Jharkhand, where rice should naturally, agroecologically, is suited for that kind of water and climate regime. So what we are saying is, let's have a more rational approach to farming. Let's not go to fundamentalism of any kind. I'm against the fundamentalism of those who say that you just do away with, just eliminate all chemical inputs in one shot, or you remove rice and wheat from the cropping pattern. No, we have to do it constantly monitoring soil health, purely on the basis of science. What the science of soils, the science of farming teaches us, we should go by that. But what I am saying is, we are not adopting science right now. We are not following the scientific protocols which should govern the use of water, which should govern the use of chemical inputs, which should govern the concern with the health of the soil. Economic policy is not following, rational parameters, because you're only procuring rice and wheat, and you're procuring rice from regions which are completely unsuited to the growing of rice. We are saying diversify the procurement basket. We are not saying eliminate rice and wheat. We are saying diversify.
Yes, sir. And the second thing is like in case of chemical fertilizers, we have seen that there are subsidies are given till now in this chemical fertilizers, and widespread market is there for these chemical inputs. But when we talk about the soil health, for better soil health, we don't have that much amount of the organic inputs. So
No, absolutely. I actually recently wrote a paper in a journal called Ecology, Economy and Society. And if people want, I can share that paper, which is exactly about what you're saying. The paper is titled Dismantling Barriers to Upscaling Agroecological Farming in India. See, as you said, we are constantly subsidizing chemical inputs, but we are not actually making the provision of bio inputs at all a national policy priority. And we have to do that, exactly as you said. I am also chairing the National Coalition for Natural Farming now. We have just set it up recently, where our major work is to create what we are calling bio input resource centers across the length and breadth of India. So that, and these can be livelihood options for farmers, where they become local production units, where these bio inputs are produced and made available to farmers who want to make the switch toward natural farming. So you are absolutely right. There should be far greater investment in providing inputs for natural farming. There has to be greater availability and access, easier access to these inputs. Otherwise, this shift, the paradigm shift I described in my presentation, will not take place. And if 230,000 crores are being spent in the coming financial year on chemical fertilizers, well, we are saying give us just 23,000 crores of that, for natural inputs, and we'll revolutionize Indian agriculture. That's actually the choice facing the country.
thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Is there any market mechanism that ensure this diversification? Yes. So, that's a good question. And what I was trying to point to is that while we create the market, see, the market will happen only through greater consumer awareness. Consumer preferences have to move in that direction. There is definitely today, especially in the southern parts of India, I always say the south leads the way. I'm biased because I spent 7 of the best years of my life in Trivandrum at CDS. So I'm a very biased participant in this kind of survey, but it's a fact. If you look at, all preferences for more nutritious food, more healthy food, it's happening in the southern parts of the country. That is a very important way in which we can activate. And there are certain companies which have come up, Safe Harvest Private Limited, which is making, this kind of food available at the doorstep. You see, the point about Safe Harvest is that it links the farmers who are doing this kind of natural farming with the consumers who are conscious about eating healthy food. But what I'm saying is, while that process will necessarily be slow, we have a very important policy lever in our hands, and that is the integrated child development services, the Anganwadi program for preschool children, the midday meal scheme for the school children, and the public distribution system. That's a huge market. Can you imagine if these programs were to incorporate these diversified cropping patterns, there would be a revolution in Indian agriculture, because we would have such demand, endless demand. A market would be created for these crops, whether whichever crops are appropriate according to the agroecology, those crops could be demanded and therefore could be grown by the farmers. This is the quickest, luckily the menu of the Anganwadis and the midday meals is not in the hands of the central government, even of the state government. It can be actually determined at the local level. What, of course, is a fixed amount is given by the government as, the amount within which that meal has to be cooked. But certainly these crops can be incorporated into those meals, and they are so nutritional. I'll tell you, they are so tasty. We organize these Jawar festivals, Bajra Mela in our areas in central tribal India, and the children are lapping up this food. They so enjoy the kind of food that is cooked by our nutritionists and dietitians. By the way, I am myself an example. I have been a diabetic for the last 20 years. For the last 3 years, I have been able to stop all my medication because I've radically changed my diet to go back to the pre-Green Revolution era. So, if you want more details, I am very happy, because diabetes, India has become the diabetes capital of this world. And we have to do something. We have a twin, syndemic, as the Lancet Commission calls it. All these references are in the paper that is there in my presentation in the EPW. They are calling it a twin syndemic. So you've got malnutrition and diabetes happening together. Yes, so the habit of food consumption is what we have to change, right? That is what I'm saying. Catch them young. If from childhood, people start eating the tastier, healthier food, there's a transformation. And always, as you know, the crisis drives the reform. There is a crisis of malnutrition and diabetes in this country, and people will willingly be compelled to change their dietary patterns. If they don't, they are continuously paying a price. But of course, we have a lot of work to do to generate that awareness about the need of that change to happen. Anyone else?
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Good evening, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, thank you. Thank you, sir, for the
Yes,
session.
yes, please.
Okay, sir. So I just want to add 2 points, sir. Like when you are saying about the crop diversification of crops in a wider angle of perspective. So if we are doing crop rotation, like paddy cultivation for 2 years, after that harvesting, go for peas and gram. This will increase the soil fertility and nutrition level, which also help in the water scarcity problem also. And the second thing, when I go through some articles, it shows that, like as you mentioned, like endosulfan, all these direct problem related to the health issues. And there is some other things like usage of subsidizing the fertility and pesticides, those things. The large farmers are using more of those, which is over usage of thing. And we know that the cultivation of paddy and wheat, all those things are near to the river bank. So the over usage of fertilizers going to the river banks, and it affect the health of the cattle, all those things, where people also are having health issues over in indirect way, in that way also. So I just want to add those
No,
points.
thank you, Nancy. You have added very important points which I missed out. Endosulfan, I should have mentioned. I'm talking to some of you who are sitting in Kerala, but also what you said about water quality of rivers, the health of all the marine life. I mean, these are very serious issues which are coming up. Already there is climate change. We have so many problems in the seashore, and all of this pollution, where is it going? It's going into our rivers and into the sea. So, very important reasons why we need to make the shift away from chemical agriculture. And by the way, I didn't put that in the paper. The world over, there is a recognition for this shift. The Food and Agriculture Organization, as you all know, to be the mother of the Green Revolution. 50 years ago, the FAO was Green Revolution technology. As many of us worked to push them in this direction today in their quinquennial review, they have now declared needs towards agroecology, towards methods of farming which are based on nature-based solutions, and which are progressively reducing the use of chemical manure. So I think the battle is being won, but people like you know, young researchers, you need to study, you know, in more depth many elements that I have mentioned in my pre-presentation and make the case stronger and try and see, like the person who asked the question first, you know, what are the obstacles remaining towards this paradigm shift in agriculture, and what are the policy levers that can be used to make that paradigm shift happen. It's a huge area of research. I would encourage many of you to, I'd be happy to supervise your dissertation if you want, you know, if you are working in any of these areas on water, farming, etc. No, I'm not able to understand your question in them. Price mechanism particularly means what?
Sir, hello.
Yes,
Can you
yes.
listen me?
Yes.
Sir, I just want to ask you that is there any a price means the price of the product that you wanted, you want, I mean the farmer want to produce, that is diversified product. So if the price of that product increases, the farmer will tend to produce that product, and I'm asking that
Right.
type of mechanism,
So
how the price,
yeah,
the market
right.
that leads to the higher price of that diversified
Yes.
product, and then
Yes, yes,
they will
I understood.
produce.
No, I understood. So I think there is a premium. Okay, there is a premium, but the size of the market is still too small. So the price part is still there, but how big is that market? How many consumers are consciously wanting to make the shift? That size still remains small. And that is why I tried to speak of policy levers for expanding the market for the diversified crops. Normally in my class, I insist that every student must speak and ask questions. We've had a very small, I think all of you are tired. Tirthas, you know, you have had too many lectures in
I
too
know.
few days.
Yeah. So next year we're not going to do that. This is a lesson learned.
Yes, yes. No, no,
But
it
sir,
is very good.
I had a
Yes, yes.
question.
Go on, go on.
Yeah, sir, what about soil health cards? So when farmers they themselves see the condition of the soil, has there been any impact of that?
No, it's a very good question because I also mention it normally in my presentation. See, the soil health card scheme. I mean, to be honest, I was amazed that a prime minister could think of soil health as something important. Okay, so all credit to the prime minister. But what if you look at the soil health card, because that's what I do. I try to see, you know, all the time in the field, trying to understand. Now, unfortunately, the soil health card also belongs to the green revolution paradigm. It only measures NPK,
Understood.
the three chemical fertilizers. It doesn't tell you about microorganisms. We call, you know, we have set up the organization of rain-fed areas network. You may have heard of it. So we talk of the three M's paradigm of living soils. That's what we call it. So what are the three M's? Moisture, that is soil moisture, soil organic matter, which I mentioned, and soil microorganisms. These three have to be measured. So I am just in the process as we speak of setting up the first soil health laboratory. Bhopal, the soil samples of our farmers to study the impact on soil organic carbon, on soil moisture, on soil microorganisms of the transition to natural farming that we are engaged. Without that, even the case for natural farming cannot be solidly put forward. Because unless you can see and demonstrate to the farmer that your soil has become so much richer. We are only obsessed with NPK. It's not going to work. We should be able to study the micronutrients also, you know. So it's a different paradigm of soil health also we have to get. So the soil health card scheme can be easily reformed, but we need therefore public investment in soil testing laboratories of a new kind. Where are those? It's only in the private sector, very expensive, inaccessible to most farmers, so nobody does it. So we have to change. We have to also change agricultural science education. So in my paper in Ecology, Economy and Society, I've gone into all this. The curriculum teaches you only the green revolution paradigm. Agriculture science in the world has moved far forward, but we are stuck in that 50-year-old paradigm of just commodity centric, increasing chemical fertilizer and pesticides. So this won't do. So change is required. It's a revolution. If the green revolution has to be gone beyond, a new revolution is required.
Right. 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 Anybody else? It's already 5. Maybe one last question.
Yes, hello.
Yes.
Can I ask? Yes, sir. Can you suggest some methodology which can be used to measure the impact of, suppose, improvement in the canal irrigation? That if an agency is investing to improve the situation of canal in particular region, and that agency wants to measure the impact of the canal irrigation on agriculture. So, can you suggest some article or methodology which can be used?
Yes, I can actually immediately email you. See, most of my work has been about that. I haven't talked about it so much in this presentation, but it's about reforming water management in India. And canal irrigation has been a complete disaster because what we have done is over irrigated some parts and under irrigated other parts completely. That is the tail end of the command has been completely neglected. So we need a paradigm shift in irrigation management in India. We have to move towards participatory irrigation management based on water users associations of farmers. What that does, see what has happened, to briefly answer you. We built large dams in this country, very large number of big dams. Then what did we do? We set up big canal systems. So there is the main canal has been built in most dams. But what we have not paid attention to is last mile connectivity. What's the point of storing water in a dam or in a main canal if that water does not reach the farmer for whom it is meant? So typically in all our large irrigation projects, water has not reached the farmers for whom it was meant. Trillions of liters of water is lying stored in large dams, which is not reaching the farmers. I'm not making an argument right now against big dams. Okay, that's a different debate. Suppose we take that big dams are there because they are there and they contain a lot of water. What we have to do, Aviral, is that we have to ensure that farmers take charge of management of this water in the part of the command area which is next to their farms. And there are large number of success stories about this. As you know, I chaired the committee to draft the new national water policy, and we have cited that these are the success stories in India. We have to devolve irrigation management to those for whom this irrigation water was meant. What that does is, it's not some romantic notion of people's participation. Those farmers are now willing to pay for the irrigation service that they get. The irrigation service fees is able to finance is able to finance the management, operation and management of the participatory irrigation management systems. And that way you get a self-sustained model, a revenue model for sustaining participatory irrigation management. Because the engineers who built the dams and the main canal, they don't know how to talk to people. You can't, the training of our engineers, I'm sorry to say, in this country, and actually, I mean, this is true in many parts of the world, they don't really know how to talk to human beings. And without being able to talk to farmers, you can't actually get farmers to have access to that irrigation water. This applies to, surface water and groundwater. Yes, so both extension officers and farmers should come together to make, I don't know which, I missed the last part, absolutely right. Actually, another part of the, paradigm shift, which the shortage of time, which is very important, is agricultural extension. The Green Revolution succeeded because of agricultural extension system. Today, that system has completely collapsed. So I am speaking about what I call the rhizomatic new agricultural extension system, which is farmer to farmer, which means we have champion farmers who have already done this new paradigm of agriculture. And we make videos, this is all, my organization makes a lot of large, the animations you saw. The same community media team, it's called, They make a lot of films. In the films, who are the heroes and heroines? They are the farmers themselves. No actors are involved. Only the farmers, and they speak of their experience, and that is shared. They become the agricultural extension officers. We are now telling the agriculture departments in every state to recognize these champion farmers as part of the agricultural extension system. Without that, you will not be able to, yeah, poor interaction and poor knowledge sharing is what is going on.
Peer,
That has
sir,
to change.
peer interaction.
Peer, okay. No, no, so poor must change to peer. Correct. My eyes are not good. So, peer interaction is very important, but right now, there is very poor knowledge and very poor interaction. There is no interaction. Thank you for those points.
Hello, ma'am. Hello.
Yes,
Shakuntala.
Shakuntala, last question is.
Sorry, ma'am. I know times are running, but I wanted to ask something. Sir, how in this industrial era, how could you interpret outside food as a nutrition of an individual?
No, no, what is the question?
Like, how could you interpret outside food for it?
What is outside food? I mean, what do you mean by
Like,
hamburgers
when
and pizzas?
yeah, like this, like chocolates, pizza,
So what I
kurkure.
call it, there is a phrase for this, Shakuntala. It's called the Macdonaldization of the globe. What we are seeing today is the Macdonaldization of the entire world. You know, India, I mean, all of you come from different parts of India. I have never eaten tastier food than the local Indian cuisine. I mean, and I don't know, I hope you are not so unfortunate that you only go on hamburgers and pizzas and whatever else that I'm sure many of you have tasted our, cuisine. So I think what we need is therefore it's a cultural revolution as well. We have been so dominated by the West. All our ideas and our notions of progress and advancement come from adoption of Western lifestyle. To some extent, it's fine. I'm not a fundamentalist. I'm not saying reject everything Western. But where it is clear that there are being mistakes being made by the industrial civilization, where it is clear that we have great richness and strength in our diversity, why are we abandoning that, which is more nutritious, by the way? The West is stealing all that. So let me give you an example. Now, I was telling you about my diabetes. One of the major elements of the cure for my diabetes is a millet called kodon and kutki, which is grown in eastern India. The European Union has taken away that kodon kutki, is about to patent it, etc. While we sitting on the riches as we are, we don't even recognize its power. But so at least I have been somewhat educated by some good people who I happen to by chance come to know. So I have shifted. I have completely stopped eating wheat, by the way. Actually, this wheat that we eat is the American wheat, is the Green Revolution wheat. We used to have an ancient wheat. It's still available on Amazon. Sometimes I eat it. It's called emmer wheat. So what I'm saying is, become educated. Let's be educated. Let's follow science. Nutrition is a huge science. All of these things we should adopt the scientific, method to understand the nutritional value of our traditional crops. And once you do that, you will realize that, you won't even think twice. You may take something from the Mediterranean, for example. That's a very healthy diet. I'm not against everything outside. That's why I told you. Let's be very careful when we say inside, outside. This leads to a lot of xenophobia. I'm not for it. This country is suffering from that right now. So let's not be against outsiders, for insiders. I think there is a lot outside which is good and a lot inside which is good. The inside we have forgotten because there is definitely a colonial mindset in India. It's an imperialist mindset because we are all glamorized by, apparently private universities in India are now looking for foreign scholars. I couldn't resist mentioning it in an ICSSR event because it's a very terrible trend that we are seeing. If you have a foreign university degree, you will be given. So without that, white chamcoin face, I'm sorry, my face is also white. I often get a lot of barbs for that. But you know what I mean, that we should not be obsessed with this kind of preoccupation. It's a racist thing, basically, an imperialist legacy. So let's get over that. Let's value our strengths, but also realize our weaknesses and whatever we can get from the outside. That should be welcome. But let's adopt an attitude where we know what we are trying to get. We should not be trying to only maximize output in the way we were doing the Green Revolution. We look at a large number of values such as water, soil, nutrition, environment, climate change, carbon. Once we look at all that, look at total system productivity, whatever combination of crops, inputs, and its technologies yields that, you adopt.
Thank you, sir. This was the perfect way, I guess, to end not only today's session but the
It
3 days.
yeah, it was the right
Thank
kind of thing to end on. Correct?
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. Thank you once again. We are very grateful that you agreed to be a part of this seminar series, and students, I'm sure, have learned a lot. And as you said, you'll share the presentation. We'll all share the materials with all of them. And thank you once again, sir. So
Thank you.
now,
Always happy to be part of anything CDS does.
of course, sir, of course.
Once in CDS, always in CDS. Okay?
Sure.
It's my second home. There's no question about it.
Absolutely, sir.
Thank you for
Absolutely.
having me. Thank you.
Absolutely, sir. Thank you, sir. So now I hand over the mic. I don't know this. There's no mic to Tyagu, Dr. Tyagu. Maybe he will take over now. Yeah.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Yeah, it's been a long workshop. Hopefully, you gain something from this in your pursue your future research. Yeah, there is, I don't know, vote of thanks is what we had put, but it might be good if, say, one or two of the participants could tell us what they learned from something that they learned from this workshop, something about the way it was organized, and say some inputs on how it could be made better. Any participant is fine, like more workshop as a whole rather than only today's session or the current session. Nobody, no comments, like nothing learned, no problem. Too tired to even talk about it.
Hello, sir. I would like to say some few words.
Yeah, Gayatri.
Yeah. So this is my first time attending a series, a lecture series by CDS. So it was I'm doing in PhD agriculture. My topic relates to agriculture. So this the 3 day sessions was very informative, and I found really like everything was really organized. I got the link at the proper time, even the materials even before the presentations were beginning, so we could quickly go through that. So the sessions were really informative. All the presentations was really, I have a lot of other series, even though I'm first to see this sponsored series. So all the topics were actually refreshing. A bit of some new information could be something or the other could be added to our knowledge, current knowledge base. So it was very nice, and it was very organizing committee also really great. So I found it really good, and I'd like to attend future. Even though this is my first, I would like to at all such things we forward by CES. So thank you so much for effort, sir and ma'am.
Yeah, thank you, Gayatri. Anybody
Thank
else?
you, Gayatri. Thank you so much. It is very nice to hear. But we would also want to know if there were any concerns, anything you would want us to do differently.
Ma'am, the only thing I found, no, because it was, as everybody was mentioning, I found it a bit hectic in the sense, not like it was 3 days and it was kind of too much tightly packed, even though there was a break 20-30 minutes, but still it was very difficult to put our attention to. It was late in the evening, so I just found that a bit of concern, but all the rest it was really good.
Thank you.
With
Thank you so much.
Yeah, maybe one more person on anything they found good about the workshop, anything about the topics they learned, which they were not aware of, or in, anything about the workshop, or anything that topic that they might have wanted to have seen.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, and see. Yeah.
Good evening to all. So this was a 3 days workshop, and I really enjoyed, and it was interesting. All the professors were so much of enthusiastic, and they were explaining all the things very detailed in manner. And we covered lot of topics in the area of agriculture, like agriculture and gender perspective, climate change, water management, labor. And minimum support price, political perspective of the thing, and agriculture market and its role. So in a short period of time, we covered all the perspective and all the dimensions which can be covered within these 3 days, and it is very interesting. A lot of sections were consumed a lot of time, and the 2 points I would like to suggest was like if every section will be offline, it will be more interesting. And the second one is like the time constraint, like time schedule, all those were like we covered most of the time, like in 24 hours, we are in the laptop for 10 or 11 hours in the stage. So it was difficult for the thing. So otherwise, everything will be good, and the organizer committee, and really thankful to the Professor Pita ma'am and Tyagu sir and CDR Sinmani sir. And all the professors who came and take their effort to spend their time. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Yeah, so basically, yeah, there have been too many lectures. I do agree, but I hope this gives a broad overview of various issues, and you can understand why agriculture to get a broad idea of all the aspects. It's very difficult, and but so hopefully all these readings and all these lectures acts as a starting point to future research, and any doubts or clarification, you also can contact some of the speakers. You can send them emails too. So it doesn't mean that only here you spoke with them, but if there is any specific question on the topics they are working, write to them and learn from them. Yeah, that is what I hope. And as somebody suggested, it would be much better to have it as an offline program next time. Being online and hybrid, I think one person who has been running around a lot is Emmanuel. I would like to convey a big thanks to him. I think he has been working beyond the 10 hours, and all my whims and fancies, I call up and say, oh, Emmanuel, have you done this? Have you done that? I think he has been bearing the brunt of, and Preeta has also been calling him up. So he's been.
I was going to say that, yes, that
Yeah.
Mr. Manuel, you have been very, very ready. I have no words to thank you.
Yeah, so if we are all working 10 hours listening, he's been working for 12, 13 hours. I think that is the biggest thanks we want to say. And also thank you, Tita, for conceptualizing this. And it was good that we were able to get this workshop the way it happened.
So I would like to add one thing, if you don't mind.
Yeah, please.
Sir, I'm sorry for taking a little bit of time. I would like to thank Emmanuel sir too, because specifically from my part, because I'm a mom of 9-month-old. It's very difficult for me to balance both now. But I forgot to send in my details. That he had mailed me to send the details for the certificate. But he could have left out that, but he specifically called me to remind me to send that. So I really appreciate that from his side. I know how difficult it is to include all the participants and do all the jobs. So thank you, Manuel, for that. And so I would like to get the email ID of Richa Kumar, because in all the 3-day sections, I don't know. I found that one particular one about the green revolution very interesting and very new information to me, because that's that part I like class very much. I couldn't convey directly to her because it was late that time. even though it was the last class yesterday, she didn't have a PowerPoint presentation because it's very difficult to catch students without a PPT. That too in the last session of that day. But I could just sit throughout her class because it was a very good. She's a very good teacher from presentation. We can understand that. So I didn't even miss a single point to what she told. So that was more effective than a PPT. So it was very good. So if you could share her mail ID, then it would be really helpful to it.
Yeah, Indadul has put it in the chat already. Yeah, so you could write to her. And anyway, Emmanuel will also send it, and the video recordings also. We'll just check with the speakers before sharing it with all of you. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you everyone. If you are in Trivandrum, come to CDS, and if you do it offline next time, please do apply, and hope to meet you in person. Peter, you want to add something? Yeah.
No, thank you. You have thanked everybody. So I want to thank the participants, and we will try and ensure that next time it's not so lengthy and not so many lectures all clubbed together. And yes, we hope all of us, both of us hope that you would have gained at least some more understanding of Indian agriculture than what you started, say before this Monday. Last 3 days, you would have had slightly more better understanding of Indian agriculture. So yeah, thank you so much for being a part of this seminar series.
Ma'am,
Yeah, and Sibolo,
Yes.
I also want to thank Emmanuel sir. I also forgot to say because many times I also got disconnected to enter this thing, and whenever I am calling, sir used to connect this thing, but I also sometimes we forgot the important person in our life.
Yeah, of course.
yeah, as Indadul says, thanks to all participants and speakers. Yeah, participants, and particularly for those who switched on the video when they didn't have connectivity issues. Okay, yeah, okay, yeah. So, bye bye. That's it from our side. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.